Kids Private Tuition for Kids College of Science Education. So in this video we're going to do straight line graphs. So it's a basic skill that you need to be able to plot your straight line graphs. We are also going to talk about quadratic graphs. We're going to talk about proportion, inverse and direct proportion, and how you can plot the graphs. Saka tichatanga nezviri simple zvacho and build from there. So the question says there on the grid, draw the graph with equation y is equal to 3x minus 1 for the values of x between minus 2 and 3. So the first thing that you're supposed to do is to create a table, and you put the x values that are between minus 2 and 3. So that's your minus 2, 1, 0, 1, 2, and 3. And the next thing that you need to do is substitute these values into this equation to get your y values. So if I substitute, it's important for you to begin with a 0. For x is equal to 0, make that your first substitution, because this is an important part of the graph where your graph is going to cut your y axis. So when x is equal to 0, what do we get? If I substitute there, I'm going to get a minus 1. And I continue to my positive values. If I put a 1 for x, I get a 2. If I put a 2, I get a 5. If I put a 3, I get an 8. And I can move to my negative values. For negative 1, 3 times minus 1, that's minus 3, minus 3, minus 1, I get a minus 4. If you've forgotten how to do this, you can go on our number line video and see how you can treat these negative numbers, minus 3, minus 1. So, okay, for 2 there, it's important that we can substitute, but we can also take note of the following. There's a sequence here, so we're going to do number sequences as well when we continue with our arithmetic. Arithmetic and just cover types of numbers, sequences. So this is an example of a sequence. 8 kuenda pana 5, we are moving down by 3, and so is 5 to 2. So these numbers are decreasing or increasing, if you want, by a constant, which is 3. This is a property of straight line graphs that you're going to consistently see that for the y values, they're going to increase or decrease by a constant. So anyway, we can now move on to plot these on our graph. So let's begin with the first point there. Minus 2 and 7. Minus 2 for x and 7 for y. So this is the point. And we go to the next one. Next one, 0 and minus 1. We proceed to this is 2 and 1 for 2 for y and 1 for x, and then 2 and 5, that's my next point, and then 3 and 8, my last point. So when upload akudaro, taking care, being keen, you need to practice this on an actual graph paper. The next thing that you need to do is simply connect the dots, the crosses with your straight line. Let's move on to the next example. On the grid, draw the graph with the equation what? Y is equal to 2x plus 5 for the x values between minus 1 and 4, your table, and you put the values minus 1 to 4 for x, and then you substitute, starting with 0, the point where your graph is going to cut the y-axis. So if I put a 0, it's a 5, I get a 5. So that's an important point on my graph. And the next one, I get a 7, 2, I get a 9, 3, I get an 11, 4, I get 13, and I move to my negative value minus 1. I can use the sequence as before. We saw that you can check what's happening to these numbers. So the next number from 13 is coming after minus 2 to 9, minus 2 to 7, minus 2 to 5. So I can predict that if I say 5 minus 2, what do I get? I get a 3. Or I can substitute this minus 1 into this equation. 2x times minus 1, it becomes minus 2. Minus 2 plus 5, what do I get? I get a 3. So I can predict, or I can simply substitute. So if we are to plot these points, those are the points beginning with minus 1 and 3, moving on to 0 and 5, 1 and 7, 2 and 9, and now 3 and 11, and then my last point, which is 4 and 13. So once I do this, the next thing is to what? Connect the crosses with a straight line. Okay, so let's move to the next thing that we would like to discuss here. So it's also important for you to know that we can use these simple straight line graphs to solve simple linear equations. So this is an example here where, let's look at the question. The graph of y is equal to 10 minus 2x is shown on the grid. Draw the graph of y is equal to x plus 1. So you are given a graph already showing on your grid, and you are asked to draw a graph of y is equal to x plus 1 for the x values 0 to 4. The first thing table, I put my x values and I substitute as we were doing, so I get those values. So the next thing is for me to plot that line. So if I plot it like that, that's my line. The next question now is for you to solve an equation 10 minus 2x is equal to x plus 1 using the information that's showing on the graph, or using the graphical method. So what do you do? So the question really is asking you to look for a point where this graph y is equal to 10 minus 2x, which is this line, is equal to this graph, which is x plus 1. So obviously this is the point where these two graphs meet. So if I go here, I can already see that there's an x value that corresponds to that point and a y value. So you're solving for x. So in other words, what is the value for x where these two lines meet or intersect? So my x value would be equal to 3. So I have found a solution for this equation. In other words, where these two graphs meet or are equal. If I were to solve this, I would take my 2 to this side and it becomes a plus 2. X plus 2, it becomes 3x. And I can move this 1 to this side. So this is called collecting like terms. And I have 10 minus 1. 10 minus 1 is how much? That's a 3. Saka ndainge ndina 10 minus 1 ndainge ndina 9 huko is equal to 9 is equal to 3x. Nda collect my like terms angu nditika. So ndikasolve equation iyi ndo divide ma sides ese na 3 nditika divide kuno kuna 3 ndinozosarwa nani, x is equal to 3. So I get the same value for x. Saka ma graphs aya anokwanisa kushandiswa kusolve my equations. So I'll meet you in the next video where we're going to be talking about some challenging graphs that are called quadratic graphs, and everything that you have to know and do with quadratic graphs, and also how you can solve quadratic equations using the graphical method. So I'll meet you in the next video. Please tell a friend to come to this channel and support our work. Like, comment, suggest material you'd want us to cover, and don't forget to share this video. So I'll meet you in the next video. Enjoy your studies.